Every day we come across several dashboards. Some are really beautiful, but not insightful at all. Some are insightful, but not beautiful. Some are both beautiful and insightful, but the user experience, not very good. And they become confusing. Other dashboards, they are beautiful, they can be insightful. Even the user experience is good, but they are too much cluttered. So it becomes frustrating for the end user, and hence the dashboards are unused. What the dashboards need is clarity in the data and in the interface, as well as experience. It should be well structured and user-centric, where the user feels that their problem is being solved. And that would make the dashboard impactful. So where exactly is the problem? The problem is lack of planning. In other words, it's lack of wireframing. And that's the topic that we are going to discuss in this video. In this video, we are going to learn the wireframing process for Power BI dashboards from the scratch. We will take a sample dataset, and based on that dataset, we will build a wireframe for the dashboard. During the process, we will also take the help of AI, which includes ChatGPT, Mokkup.ai, Claude.ai, and some other tools. We'll start with the purpose of building the dashboard. Moving on to the audience and the dataset review, we will define certain objectives, link them to the KPIs, moving on to the storytelling process, and then deciding what visuals we want to use in our dashboard, then designing a low-fidelity wireframe, that is a sketch on a piece of paper, and then deciding what filters and tooltips we want to use, ending up with the high-fidelity wireframe. Finally, we would discuss the iteration process. In the AI part, we would be going through certain prompts in ChatGPT and other AI tools. I have created those prompts, and those prompts are available in the description of the video. You can download them and you can have a better idea how you can use it. You can use those prompts or even similar prompts on your own dataset and find out how ChatGPT can help you or how AI can help you with your dataset. Besides ChatGPT, we would use another AI tool which is called Claude.ai. Here also we would be giving a certain prompt and seeing how we can design the dashboard based on that prompt. Then we would be using another tool which is called Mokkup.ai, and again we would be giving a prompt and see how it can translate our prompt into the dashboard design. Finally, we would be moving on to Figma, and there we would be looking at different kinds of dashboards and getting inspirations from different sources. We would also build a low fidelity sketch and then a high fidelity sketch. Before building the dashboard or doing any kind of task, you need to know the reason why you're doing that task. The approach that we see on the screen, it's called the golden circle approach. It was defined by Simon Sinek in his book. And here we can see that the purpose of any task, that is the center or the nucleus of the whole process. When we define the purpose, then we define the process, how we are going to achieve our goals, and then we talk about the what factor, which is the result. What would be the product that your customers, both internal and external, would get? We can see some of the examples on the screen based on our dataset that is related to sales data that we will see shortly. For example, if we want to build a dashboard about the sales overview, where we monitor certain KPIs, like the common ones like the revenue, profit, and top products and so on. We could also have another dashboard where we are focusing on the regions and trying to understand which regions are underperforming or they are meeting the targets. And then we could also have like product or customer centric dashboards. Once we know why the dashboard is being built, we also need to know what problem would it solve, right? So it could be something that in case if we just want to monitor the progress against the targets. It could also be related to the process. For example, in certain companies, the employees, they are spending a lot of time building the reports manually. They are copying and pasting the data from one place to another, and that consumes a lot of time, a lot of man hours, right? So that manual process can also be replaced with an automatic process so that the time saved by the employees can be used in other important tasks. There's one more thing, that whenever you're building the dashboard, sometimes the question would come from the users, from the customers, internal or external, and sometimes you analyze the data, you see the data, and you offer a solution. Let's have a look at the sales data quickly. So I've got 4 different tables. One is a fact table where I've got the transactions. Then we have got a dimension table. It's all about sales agents and their descriptions. Then we've got the product dimension table and the customer dimension table. So now if we go to ChatGPT And as you can see that the first prompt that I entered is that I want to build a dashboard in Power BI, and I have sales dataset with dimension and fact tables as below. Few lines of each table posted. What I did is that I copied the first 10 lines of each of those tables and I pasted them here. And then I am asking what kind of dashboards can I create with this dataset. So now you can understand the scenario that it's something that I want to make from my own side. So I am not getting the questions from the customers, but I am trying to create a solution that I can propose to the customers. So that's why I'm asking these questions, that what kind of dashboards can I create with this dataset? I'm giving these 3 examples, the ones that I showed you in the slide. And as you can see here, it gives me a few suggestions like the sales overview dashboard. This is something that I can build for the executive snapshot of overall performance, a product performance dashboard, customer insights dashboard, sales agent, time and process dashboard, and profitability and cost analysis dashboard, even strategic. That means like what's driving the growth dashboard. So now we are getting the idea about the types of the dashboards and some of the visuals and the insights that we can place on these dashboards. Remember that ChatGPT will not always give you the correct results, but most of the time it would be like 90% correct, or it's just a good start to use ChatGPT in case if you do not have any idea about your dataset. Personally, I use ChatGPT in 3 roles. One, as a teacher, where I don't know about a topic and I would ask about that topic. Second one is as an advisor, that I know some information about the topic, but now I'm taking advice how I can go forward with that particular task. And the third one is as an assistant, that I know what to do and how to do, but I want it to be done quickly. Here it's also telling me about the filters and the slicers that I can use on the dashboard. Then in the next prompt, I said that I would select sales overview dashboard. This is the dashboard that I want to build, and what business problems can it solve? Give me examples from real world scenario. I can go for the revenue and profit visibility. I can identify top and underperforming products, regional sales, sales agent, profitability monitoring, forecasting and planning. And the structure that it follows is that it tells me about the problem, that is basically the question, I can say, or the business problem that we have, the dashboard insight, some of the insights that the dashboard can offer, and then the real world scenario where it is giving me some of the examples from real companies where I can apply these kind of solutions. The second step is to identify your audience. Now remember that the companies always have a hierarchical structure. That means that they would have some kind of executives, managers, analysts, or these kind of different positions. So now what our purpose is that the dashboard that we are designing, it has to be focused for a certain audience, because the dashboard would help the users to take certain decisions, and every position in the company has different kinds of decisions to make. For that, they need to see different kind of data. As you can see that we are first deciding who will use the dashboard. For example, executives, they have their own analysis criteria, managers have their own, and then the analysts. And then based on that, we have the decisions that they would be making. For instance, executives, they are usually concerned with the strategic decisions and the company-wide decisions. Managers, they come at the regional level or the product level. And then the analysts who are dealing with the operational and day-to-day optimization. So here we define the audience. Continuing the discussion that I had, I say here that I would select revenue and profit visibility. That is, for the executives, usually, what audience can it be created for? Example, executives, managers, agents, etc. So it tells me that it could be created for executives if you are going for the big picture. It could be created even for sales and regional managers if you are focusing on the teams, products, and regions. And it can be created for the sales agents if they want to focus on their own contribution and other operational activities. Finally, it adds another one which is about operations and finance teams. but we are focusing on sales. So I would just stick with the sales approach. So now I tell that I would make it for the executives. What are the questions that they can ask? Remember that we are building the sales overview dashboard. So we have defined the dashboard purpose, that we want to have an overview. The second thing is that we are now deciding the audience. So the audience is the executives. We are not talking about the managers or the analysts. I'm saying I would make it for executives. What are the questions that they can ask? So now it tells me about the fast strategic insights, revenue and profit visibility dashboard, and these are the key questions the executives might ask. For example, the overall business health. And now it's also giving me some questions that I can put on my dashboards and I can give them some actionable insights. So we've got overall business health, we've got trends and growth, we have got the profitability drivers, strategic resource allocation, and then the future outlook. Now, if you ask me, I'll just go a step ahead. What it means is overall business health, that would be defined by the KPIs, and we would see that in the next steps. Trends and growth would be defined by the line charts and the column charts, that we would have some kind of monthly trend. Profitability drivers would be the drivers like the regions, products, and customers. Strategic resource allocation, we would be talking about the sales team. And then the next prompt that is also related to step number 2 is, with the given dataset, could you tell me what would be the common questions an executive would ask about overall business health, trends and growth, profitability drivers, and strategic resource allocation? Now I'm slightly turning this conversation towards my dataset, because now I have already given the dataset. So ChatGPT would evaluate that dataset and tell me what are the questions that can be asked and what are the answers that we can get. And also I'm telling it what are the questions or what type of questions I want to keep. For example, the overall business health, trends, profitability drivers, and the strategic resource allocation. I'm not talking about the future outlook. So here I've asked this, and then here it starts to tell me the common questions and also its relation with the data set. Like, what are the metrics that I have in my data set that I can use to answer these questions? So we can see here order date, sales versus profit, product category, region breakdowns, and profit margin, sales agent key. These are some of the keys and some of the metrics that it's defining. The last prompt of this step is, what would be the decisions that VP of sales? So now I know that executive position in sales could be like the vice president of sales. So I'm asking, what would be the decisions that VP of sales would make based on these questions? Give me 5 different examples of highest priority from real world scenarios. Now I'm trying to understand what are the kinds of decisions that they would make, so I can get even more information about what kind of actionable insights I can put on the dashboard. Before you start designing the dashboard, you have to review the data. You always have to understand the data structure that is given to you in the dataset, and if the data is relevant, is it clean and complete? Usually you will get an incomplete or unclean data, and you have to do certain transform functions to clean the data. You need to see if it can answer all of the questions once it has been transformed. You have to determine the dimension and the fact tables. As you can see on the screen, that most of the time you would be working with a star schema where you would have dimension tables, which are the tables that store descriptive information about the events. And then you would have a fact table, which would be the center of the star, and that stores the measurable events or the transactions. And how the data model would be, for example, here you would see that in the dimension table you will have the primary key, and then those keys would be treated as foreign keys and would be used to link to the fact table, and you would have some facts and transactions. Now let's have a look at the data set. We are using this data set in our example of this video, and it's quite simple data set. We have got the sales fact table. As you can see, there are measurable events and transaction details with dates and numbers. You've got the sales agent dimension table, a very simple sales agent key and the sales agent's name. These are the descriptions. we've got the products dimension table, and then we've got the customer dimension table. The fourth step is to define the business objectives. These are the directional goals, and still these are not the numbers. They help you to later decide which KPIs are meaningful and ensure that the dashboard would support the real business decisions. The business objectives are usually set for the future. So it could be something like the organization, what are they trying to achieve in the next 6 to 12 months? These are usually the quarterly or the annual targets that the organizations they are setting. So in our example, it's sales. So of course it would be like a sales target for the next year. For example, we want to increase the revenue while protecting the margins, like 15% year on year. And why it would matter? Growing sales without margin protection leads to busy but unprofitable business, right? The second one is expanding the regional market share. And we want to increase the revenue by 20% in the underperforming regions, so that the dependence on the top performing regions that can be reduced and a balance can be created. The third one could be something like elevate the sales team performance. So here we want to increase the average sales per agent by 12%, and it would create a stronger, more consistent sales force, not just dependent on the top performers. Let's have a look at ChatGPT. For the business objectives, I'm giving a prompt something like, from the perspective of VP sales, give me samples of 3 to 5 business objectives that an organization with this data set would want to achieve in the next year. And we get results something like this, that increase revenue while protecting the margins. This is what we saw in the slide. And it also tells us this is the objective and this is why it matters. Also, we get some kind of dataset link that it would tell us that you can use sales profit divided by sales to get the profit margin. So it will tell you the objective, why it matters, and how you can use your dataset for that. Similarly, we've got expanding the regional market share, something that we saw in the slide. And then the third one is optimize the product portfolio for profitability. So here you could see that in case if you want to increase the revenue share from the high margin categories, that would result into greater profit. So here it tells you why it matters. Strengthen the customer base and elevate the sales team performance. That is also something that we saw in the slide. And here we have the summary for the sales objectives for the next year. Carrying on this conversation, I write further that I will write some prompts regarding business goals and you give me the short answers. What are the most common strategic objectives for a sales-focused business? So here what I'm trying to do is to initiate a discussion to understand more what I can offer using this dashboard, and if I can incorporate some of meaningful numbers into these business objectives. How can I align dashboard goals with overall business objectives like growth, market share, and sales agent performance, and suggesting some strategic objectives that an executive sales dashboard should support. So it gives me some of the questions and some more examples here. Once we have decided the business objectives for the dashboard, it's time to talk in terms of numbers. How will we measure that progress towards those objectives? For that, we would need the numbers, and the numbers would be coming from the data set that we have. We always try to keep the dashboard as simple and meaningful as possible. As I always say, that less is more. So we have to make sure that we have less numbers on the screen. The charts are less busy, but they can provide the information as much as possible. For that purpose, we would keep KPIs 4 to 6 maximum, so that the dashboard does not overload or overwhelm the user. So here we can see that we have got these business objectives, how we can translate that into a KPI, and how it would serve our purpose. So for increasing the revenue, we can see that we will track overall sales performance versus the target, and we would see if we are reaching our target. For the profit margin, we would ensure that the revenue growth remains profitable and above that profit margin that we have set as our target. We would look at the year-on-year revenue growth. So we would monitor the progress versus last year, right? So it could be possible that the year-on-year revenue growth is still positive, but it is still less than the target. That is where the KPI 1 and KPI 3 would come into play. We would monitor the revenue by region as well as percent growth. So it would spot the underperforming and the strong regions. And then we would also calculate the average sales per agent to make sure that the average sales per agent is increasing. At the same time, we would also try to see how many agents they are meeting the targets and how many of them they are not up to the mark, so we can pay attention to that area. In all of these KPIs, you should always emphasize on quality over quantity. Back to ChatGPT. Here you can see in the prompt, I am typing those questions that we discussed in step number 4. And now I am asking ChatGPT to suggest the KPIs that I can use to measure these objectives. So here it tells me that revenue plus profit margin objective. It tells me the KPI, how I can calculate that. Everything is present here. And it also tells me how it would be helpful for the VP sales. Then we have got the regional growth objective, where we would see the revenue by region, how we can calculate that, the year-on-year growth as well as the profit margin, and the percentage contribution to the sales by region. We can also see the underperforming as well as the top regions. Then we would have the sales team performance objective, and we would have some kind of calculations for the sales team performance. As you can see here, I still didn't get the answer in terms of what are the KPIs I should be placing on my dashboard. So here I asked, suggest me maximum 6 KPIs combined for the questions I asked. Tell me in the order from the highest priority to the lowest priority. The KPIs would be the KPI cards. Now here I'm telling it that I want to have the KPIs, and I already have it in my mind that I want to keep the KPI cards, and I want them to be from top priority to the less priority ones. Here it gives me the list of those 6 KPIs that we discussed in the slide, like the total revenue, profit margin, year-on-year revenue growth, revenue by region, average sales per agent, and percentage of agents meeting or exceeding the targets. And here it's telling me why it's giving this order, because revenue and margin are the first KPIs that would directly impact the company's bottom line. What are the contribution factors? Those are basically the regional revenues. So these come next to identify the trends and the strategic areas. This could also be a product one. It depends on you how you are designing your dashboard. And then we have got the team performance KPIs because they support the execution of growth. And then I go further and I ask if it can list down these KPIs in the form of objective, KPI, and purpose or insight, so I can get more understanding of these KPIs. As you can see, it gives me that table that I have already provided in the slide. The next step is the storytelling flow. Remember that a good storytelling reduces cognitive load. The user should immediately understand the big picture before diving into the details. In storytelling, we can say that there are 4 different components that could complete a storytelling flow. The first one is the overview. It tells us what's happening and it can be summarized through the KPI numbers. The second one is the trends. It gives us the direction. For example, in our case, we've got the sales over time to identify certain patterns or anomalies that are happening over a period of time. The third one is the drivers. It tells us why it's happening. It could be either a product, a region, or a customer is exceeding the expectations or is underperforming. And then we've got the details, which give us the transaction level insights and tells us who is responsible. So this basically mirrors the way in which an executive thinks. That is a snapshot, the context, the root cause, and the accountability. And remember that a good dashboard doesn't just answer what happened, but it should also answer why did it happen and what should we do next. Let's have a look at ChatGPT prompts. So we are continuing our conversation and now we are going to give the prompt something like, give me the storytelling flow for these objectives, follow the pattern, overview, trends, drivers, and details. And then it tells us that storytelling flow, that the first component, which is overview, it could be the summary KPIs. For example, total revenue year to date, profit margin in percent, year-on-year revenue growth in percent. And then the second one would be the trends or the time series. Here it would tell us, are we improving over time or not? And it could be revenue trend versus last year, or it could be against the target, like the profit trend versus the target. It also helps us to highlight the seasonality or sudden dips and spikes. Furthermore, we've got the drivers where it's telling us the drivers, they could be by region, product category, or customer tier, and with different examples, because these are the factors that would drive the growth of the revenue and the profit. And finally, we have got the details, that is the execution and accountability, and that refers to the sales agents as well as the daily transactions or the sales agents' performances. Then I move on to asking further questions where I'm saying, considering the 6 objectives, how can I turn raw sales numbers into a story for business users? So what I'm doing here is basically, first I ask about the storytelling flow, and now I want to apply that storytelling flow to my 6 business objectives that I have defined. Here it says, step 1, start with the big picture. You are going to mention the revenue year to date, which is like a certain percentage year on year, and the profit margin. And what is the insight? It's also telling me the insight that it positions the company as growing, but margin sustainability is the key watch point. Then comes the second step, which is basically the direction, and that is the trends over time. So story with the data would be, if I am looking at month on month, I could be looking at year on year, or even some other timeline. Then the third part is explaining the drivers. So here we are telling that where are the sales and profits coming from. And here it's giving me the example of the products. For example, furniture and accessories are driving most of the profit. And I can also talk about the regions. Then the inside, it reveals that not all growth is equal. Some products or regions might be exceeding the expectations, whereas some of them might be underperforming. And then comes the accountability. Here we are looking at the sales force, and again here we see who is performing well and who is not performing well, so we can help them in this regard. And then we are going to end with the action and the business impact. So what do we do about it? Remember that when we were talking about the dashboards, so there were 3 different aspects about the dashboard, that it tells us what happened. It should also tell us why it happened. And the third point was, what should we do about it? So this is the thing that we are going to turn our insights into actionable insights. And then I ask a general question, which is not related specifically to this dashboard. And that is like, what are the common mistakes in dashboard storytelling and how do I avoid them? And then it tells me, first, which is a very common mistake, that dumping the numbers without context. So sometimes we are building the dashboards, just putting the numbers and the visuals on the screen, but they do not have any kind of context or business importance. So it gives me a few mistakes that can be avoided while we are building the dashboard. The 7th one is the information architecture. We are not at the dashboard layout yet, but now we are slowly getting into it. As you can see on the screen, it's very simple. When we are designing the dashboard, we have to remember the reading pattern of the users. It's from left to right and from top to bottom for the English speakers. But then there are some scripts which are going from right to left. So for example, Arabic script. So for that, we have to go from right to left and then from top to the bottom. As you can see here, we've got the top row, which should have the high-level KPIs, and they provide the immediate and actionable overview. Those would be the summarized numbers. Then we would have the middle row that would tell us about the comparisons or the trends of different regions, products, or things like that. And then at the bottom, we are including the details that are of lesser value, and they can be transactional level insights or those kind of things. The last component is the bridges, which is basically the interactivity of the filters, slicers, and drillers. Continuing from point 6, I say, considering the storytelling and the 6 KPIs that you mentioned, could you now tell me the dashboard layout according to the top row, middle row, and the bottom? This is the layout that I'm envisioning for my dashboard. And I'm asking, also tell me the interactivity elements, example, filters, slicers, and drill throughs. So it tells me that I have to place some KPI cards in the top row that we have already discussed before. In the middle row, I can place the trends and drivers. That means the line chart, the bar and the column chart, or bar chart or tree map, depending on my data. In our case, it would be the line chart that would show the monthly trend of the revenue. And for the bar chart, it would be the regions as well as the product categories. And then in the bottom row, it's telling me that I can include the details and accountability. So for example, the KPI card that shows the average sales per agent, the percentage of agents meeting the targets, and then some details. Interactivity elements, as we can see that our data is very simple, so we could have filters related to the time period, that's for sure. We can have it according to the region, product category, and customer segment in case if we have that classification of customers. These are like new customers, mid-tier, and high-tier customers, and so on. Some of the drill throughs, it's telling us that we can click the region and we can go into that region page. That would be a separate page for the region. For the product category, we can do the same, and for the sales agent, we can do the same. In this video, we are only focusing on the overview dashboard, but here we get the idea that we can create basically 4 dashboards in a very simple structure. One is the overview dashboard that we discuss in this video. Then we can have the region dashboard that would be reached in case if we drill into one of the regions. Another one could be a product category dashboard and a sales agent dashboard. And now, just out of curiosity, I ask it slightly different questions. So if we go back to the slide, what we were saying is that in the top row, I have to place all the high level KPIs. And in the middle, it's just trends and comparisons, right? So there are no KPIs at the bottom. So what I'm asking here is, do you think that I can place all the KPI cards at the top, or will it disturb the storytelling flow? Because it's telling me that I have to place one KPI card, in fact 2, about the sales agents. So it replies back to me that if I place all the 6 KPI cards at the top, there would be some pros, which is that the executives, they see everything at once. But the interesting part for me was like the cons, like it can break the storytelling flow, because the team level KPIs, they would be appearing before the story of revenue, trends, and drivers. And this is something which I really agreed that, it would break the storytelling flow. And then it tells me the possibility, if I split the KPI cards, what are the pros and the cons? So the best practice was, with which I went forward in my dashboard, that was that I will put the strategic KPIs at the top, then I would keep the execution or the people's KPIs at the bottom, so that the storytelling flow, that remains smooth. And then I asked, can you give me an example of wireframe structure for the hybrid dashboard or for the hybrid approach? It didn't reply in a positive way, so I think this prompt we can simply ignore. The next step is the mapping of the KPIs to visuals. It's a very quick step. Here you are basically deciding the types of the charts that you would use for each of the KPIs and the trends. There are a couple of guiding principles for the visuals to be used. For example, for single values, we always use the cards. For the trends, we use the line charts or the combo charts. For the comparisons, we use the column charts or the bar charts. And for the exact numbers or transactional details, we are using the tables. Finally, we have reached one of the interesting parts where we are now starting to make the dashboard. This is called a low fidelity wireframe or a low-fi wireframe, in which we sketch a very rough layout of the dashboard with a piece of paper and pen. And this does not have to include any kind of details. So as you can see on the screen, this is the dashboard layout that I'm going to create using our use case, and it's quite simple. We are emphasizing on the structure. We are just looking at the placement of different components of the dashboard. As you can see, like the logo, the menu buttons, how I would divide the dashboard, placing some of the details like the filter, the welcome message, dividing the dashboard into 3 sections. One is the KPI part, which is like the top part, and then I am drawing those KPIs that I have decided to put on my dashboard. The revenue trend and some of the comparisons, which is in the middle part, and in the lower part I am putting some of the KPIs related to the sales agents. In this particular structure, what we are doing is basically we are not only dividing the space but going to a slight detail where we are also telling whether it's like a number or a percentage. It would be some kind of trend, right? What I would mention in the trend, something like that. But we are not dealing with the actual numbers at all. Here, as you can see, I am mentioning that I would be putting a table. I would be putting some of the columns there, and then some of the details that would be critical for my analysis. The next step is to decide the interactions and the filters. So as we know that filters are really important for the users to explore the data, because they want to slice and dice the data to get to their results or the analysis. And the useful filters in our case, as we saw in ChatGPT, they would be like the time period, region, product category, and even the customer or customer category if it applies. And then we've got like the drill throughs, some tooltips, or cross filtering between the visuals. Coming back to ChatGPT, here I'm asking a couple of prompts about the filters. So I say, can you suggest the useful filters that I can use on this dashboard? In fact, it should be like I can use on this dashboard. And it tells me it could be time-based filters, geography or region filters, product filters, customer filters, and sales team filters. So these are some of the filters that we have already discussed. Then I ask, what tooltip pages can I add on top of the visuals to make them more intuitive and descriptive? So it tells me that on the revenue KPI tooltip, you can show the revenue breakdown by region and product category. This is something that you can, do when the user hovers over the KPI card of the revenue. And you can also show the last 12-month mini trend, but we are already showing the trend in the middle row, so that is not needed. Then it also tells us some tooltips about the profit margin in percentage. That could be like by product category, top 5 products contributing to the margin, and so on. Year-on-year growth tooltip, revenue by region tool. So here you can show the regional revenue versus the company average. That's a good one. And the top 3 customers in that region, average sales per agent tooltip, and a couple of other ones. So that's a good start for the tooltips, I would say. Finally, the main step of all of this process, which is the high fidelity wireframe or the hi-fi wireframe. Here we are designing the dashboard mostly as it would look in our BI tool, and that is something that we show to the customer and ensure that they would like that design and they would find it useful. Couple of sources where I usually go to is Dribbble and Figma, or I can search it online anywhere. It could also be Pinterest. So Dribbble, as you can see in Dribbble, there are several designs for different dashboards and KPI cards from all around the world, and a lot of content to be inspired from. And then we have got Figma. In Figma, we have a lot of inspirational content. At the same time, we have a lot of templates that we can reuse in our wireframe while we are building it. And that is something that we are going to do. And then we can find it even like, a simple Google search like sales dashboards or something like that. One of the main things about this hi-fi wireframe is that you have to be consistent with the details, especially the aesthetics. That means the fonts, the colors, the layouts, and also what we have to do, and we'll see that when we design it in Figma, that we can be pixel perfect, because in Power BI usually we are drawing and making pixel perfect reports, and we can do the same in Figma, that we can decide the position and the size of the visuals there in Figma that we can simply copy over to Power BI and start working with the visuals. Even the spacing between the border and the heading, that should be consistent in all of the visuals. For example, here, as you can see in the KPI, I am using a specific space, and then in the visuals, I am using a different space. So all of this has to be very consistent. The titles and the labels should be very clear, because this is basically the selling point to the customer, both internal and external customers. So you have to be very clear with the titles and the labels. And then also you have to keep a check on the accessibility, which is the contrast, the tooltips, and the legends, because it might be possible that you are building the dashboards for disabled people, or people who are colorblind or who have some kind of color deficiency. So you have to keep a check on the contrast and accessibility. Regarding the use of AI in building the wireframe, I think it depends on the tools that you are using. Sometimes we can use ChatGPT, but I don't think that ChatGPT is very much efficient in drawing good and inspiring wireframes. But then there are other tools that you can use. For example, Claude.ai, as you can see on the screen. I'll copy the prompt here, which I have written before. Here I'm saying build a sales analysis dashboard to track revenue and team performance, visualize total sales by region and product, sales growth month over month. Put the main sales KPIs in the top row, the total revenue and the profit margin, year-on-year growth. In the middle row, show revenue and profit margin trend, revenue by region, revenue and profit by product category. In the bottom row, show KPI card and percentage of agents meeting targets, and the table. All of this, and let's press enter and let's see what happens. At last, it has created this dashboard, which is quite linear in the style, but at least we can get some of the styles for the KPI cards. This one looks quite clean, that it's showing me the total revenue, profit margin, year-on-year revenue growth, and then it shows me the revenue and profit margin trend. Of course, I would want to see the quarterly one, so it's quite nice that I can control it in terms of monthly and quarterly. At the same time, I don't like the axis to be on the right, it has to be on the left. I don't like the grid lines as well. Revenue by region, it's showing me different revenues by region. It's showing me how much did it achieve, at the same time whether it fulfilled the target or not. And then revenue and profit by product category. I like these column charts. Average sales per agents, and percentage of agents meeting the targets, and then the top agent performance. So here we can see that it gave us quite nice a mock-up of the dashboard. It hasn't given us the dashboard structure, but it has given us some of the visuals. On the left hand side, we can see that it's giving us the data or the details. For example, what it's showing in the top row, the middle row, the bottom row, and some of the key features. So interactive elements, toggle between monthly and quarterly views, hover tooltips, which is basically this one. That's nice. Visual indicators, color coded performance. So here it's showing us that which ones are meeting the target and which ones have not met the target. That's a good way to represent, where we are not focusing on the actual numbers, but we are focusing on the targets themselves. Then we have got the responsive design, works on different screen sizes, real data simulation, realistic sales figures and performance metrics. Okay, professional styling, clean modern dashboard appearance with proper spacing and typography. So this is quite nice. I like the design of some of the visuals, but of course, like, this is not the final design that we are going to make. What I really like is basically this revenue by region, and it could be that the dashboard that I have built, if applicable, I think I would replace that revenue by region visual with this kind of visual. Another tool that you can use is Mokkup.ai, but I think they have a specific limit. If you are using the free plan, there are some credits that you can only use for a couple of dashboards, and then you need to buy those credits. Nevertheless, we can see if we can get something out of it. So after logging in using a new account, I will paste that prompt here. So it's the same prompt. Let's generate and let's see what happens. So here we can see on the screen, it's quite nice and simple dashboard where we have got these KPIs, like the total revenue, profit margin, and year-on-year revenue growth. We've got this monthly revenue and profit margin. This is a nice inspiration that I will use the actuals as columns and then the prior year as the line. However, here they are using the revenue and the profit margin for the line and the columns respectively. They are using this dual axis. That's also a nice idea. The regional revenue growth, I think this much is too much cluttered, so we need to see how we can make it cleaner. Then we've got the revenue by product category, so that's also quite nice. We have got the donut chart. It's up to you if you prefer a donut chart or a bar chart. In my perspective, it should be a bar chart, so that's what I would use. Then we've got the average sales per agent, agents meeting targets, and then we have got those details. So this is one of the inspirations, and how I usually work is that I take the inspirations from multiple sources to build my own dashboard. Here, there might be some styles or some inspirations that I would really like and I would want to take. And then there might be some kind of architecture or structure here that I might like and I would use that in my dashboard. So you always have to be flexible to use the styles from different sources to build your own dashboard with your own unique style. The third source of inspiration is Figma, which is my favorite go-to place for the dashboard designs as well as the wireframing. Here, once you log in, and you can also watch one of my videos where I explain the step-by-step process of how to build a background for your dashboard in Figma. I go through all of the process of creating an account in Figma and setting the frame size and the pages, and then creating backgrounds using some different effects. So you can have a look at that video. Here, what we are doing is once we have logged in, we will go and search in the community. So let's say we are working on sales dashboard. So sales dashboard. And once we type it, we would see plenty of dashboards here that we can basically use and reuse. So for example, there would be some dashboards where you would find only the images of the dashboards, whereas there would be some dashboards where you can find the reusable components. And that is what we are going to use. Let's say I go to sales management dashboard, open in Figma. Now, if I see this is a dashboard, but if I look at the thumbnail, okay, so this is just an image. I cannot use this. But I can still take some inspiration of the design that, okay, in case if I want to place some kind of a gate charts or anything like that, I can take the inspiration from here. And if I come back, let's try this one, click, open in Figma. Now here we've got this dashboard and we can see plenty of components, and this is something that we can reuse in our dashboard wireframe. So if I click here, I see that this is this frame. I would zoom in, and then if I look at this, so I've got this frame, double click on it, it would even open more and more. Here I can see if I keep on double clicking, I would just keep on zooming into the visual itself. Let's say you have got this KPI, which is like the number, okay, and then you have got this component, which is like the year-on-year percentage growth. Here it's from last week and so on, and we'll see later on how we can reuse it. Then in this particular trend chart, we can see that this is the frame, right? And let me just collapse it. And so this is the one, right? We keep on expanding it. We've got this revenue trend, so this is the text, and we've got this frame. Every component is designed separately and they are then grouped together. But once you have designed these components for your dashboard, you can have several components. You can have like a library of different components of the visuals or complete visuals, and then you can use those components. You can even change the colors. So for example, if I select this one, and you can simply change it, there you go. So it's quite easy to reuse these kind of visuals. in your wireframes. Then we've got some other AI resources for the wireframes, such as Imagine 3, Flux 1, Midjourney, Leonardo.ai, and many others. But I have shown you Claude.ai, Mokkup.ai, and Figma. Like these are some of the places from where I get the inspiration. Now that we have discussed about the details, how we are going to start from the scratch and decide the KPIs, decide the visuals that we want to build a low fidelity mockup, and then we saw different tools to create visuals and to get the inspirations from. Now you can see on the screen, this is the high fidelity mockup that I have created on Figma. And in case if you want to see the step-by-step process, how to create this high fidelity mockup in Figma, you can watch this video that is shown in the description. As we saw in the low fidelity mockup, how we started is that we decided the frame size, which is 1920 by 1080 pixels. Then I divided the canvas according to the low fidelity mockup. On the left hand side, I put the logo, and this is the active button. These are the inactive buttons. Then on the right hand side at the top left, we can see that these are the messages. Then we have certain notifications that can be triggered by the user. And then we have this login name. Here we can see the welcome message and the refresh time of the dashboard and the title of the dashboard. And then we've got these two important KPIs. This is the actual revenue year to date. Then we've got like a green or a red according to the increase or decrease versus last year. And if you remember, we had the target of 15%. So we are showing that this is the set target and this is what has been achieved. As of now, it is being missed by 2.9%. And then we've got this information icon, and the way it's going to function is that once we click on this in Power BI, so it's going to be something like this. So here we would have a small information box which would show that the target has been achieved, it's near the achievement, or it has been missed, different regions, and they are showing the target achievement of individual regions. Similarly, we are showing it for the products. This is the close icon. So once you click on it, it will be closed. Then on the right hand side, we've got the same thing for the profit margin, the same details, the actual number versus last year, and then the target and achieve. Here again, once I click on this information icon, I would be seeing something like this: the target achieved, near or missed, and product category and profit margin. Then on the left hand side, we've got this revenue trend. We are showing the color, whether the target was met or the target was missed. And here we can see the revenue. This is the prior year line, and at the top we are seeing whether the profit margin it was achieved or not according to the set threshold of 25%. Then we've got the revenue by region. Here also we are showing whether it's increasing or decreasing year on year, and by the tick mark we are showing whether the target was met. So 14%, that was an increase as compared to the prior year, but the target set is 15%, so that was not achieved. And here it was achieved for North and West region. Then we've got the revenue by product category. Again, the same color coding, whether it's a decrease year on year or an increase year on year. Then this section is related to the sales agents. So here we are showing the average sales per agent, target set, the target achieved, and the target exceeded by 0.2 in terms of percent. This one is quite nice because here we are showing the percentage of agents who are meeting the targets, and you can see the donut chart that is combined with the KPI number. But what I really like here is this information box. Here we are showing how many agents exceeded the target, how many of them are near the target, and how many of them have missed. On the right hand side, it's supposed to be the table which would detail all of these numbers. So here we would have the agent's name, the revenue that they earned in this year to date, of course, the profit, and what was the revenue target, whether the target achievement was met or not. Here it's the number, and here we are showing they have exceeded the target and they are near the target. One last thing I forgot to mention was the filters. Yeah, this should have been the first one. So here we have got this filter box, and how it's going to work is that once you click on this filter icon, it's going to show you this filter. You're going to select the drop down box of the year, the region, and the product, and you can achieve this easily in Power BI using the bookmarks. When you click on the close icon, it should disappear, and at the same time all those selected filters should be shown here so that you know what you are filtering or what is the view that you're looking at. And if I scroll down, these are basically the frames that I have created. And this is for the filter that you saw before. This is for the revenue growth, and this is for the profit margin. And then we've got these top 5 customers in the region. So yeah, this is also another thing. So this is for the regions. In case if I want to see the top 5 customers in this particular region, in Power BI, I can enable the tooltip page. I would bring my mouse pointer here on this bar. So it would show me the top 5 customers in this region. So this is how we make the high fidelity mockup in Figma. With the 12th step, it's time to wrap up the video. Here we are saying that once you have built the wireframe, once you have built the dashboard, then you would go to the users, and it always happens that your first dashboard is never your last dashboard. It's a continuous process of improvement. You would go to the users, they would give some input, you have to test it, refine it, get the feedback, and keep continuing that cycle unless and until you reach the desired output from your side as well as the customer side. That is all for this video. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe, and please let me know in the comments what do you think about this video. And in case if you are designing the dashboards, what are the steps that you usually take? Please let me know, and have a nice day.